Today I decided to reach out and interview somebody called Dawn Garland. I saw her videos a few years ago. I also met her. I don't know if you remember this, but I met you, Dawn, about like 5 years ago, wherein I had a little bit of an accident with Richard Sylvester. Like
Yeah,
he
I
was
remember.
doing he was
Yeah,
doing a
I
talk.
remember. Yeah, we were all kind of gathered in the foyer at some
Yeah.
point. Chaos.
This it was really funny because I copied him and stole his place. I'd been to a talk there and then I completely copied his venue. And then I accidentally did a talk on the same day that he was doing a talk. And then I took his space. So I then did it in his space. And I remember seeing you then and yeah, being struck by, I hope this doesn't embarrass you, but by how beautiful you were. I just saw you walking along and you're quite stunning. And so I was just like, oh,
Yeah.
and we didn't speak or anything. I remember just being a little bit embarrassed because of all the chaos I'd caused.
No, but we made some kind of contact. I remember that. I felt that very strongly when I saw you.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, so that was the first meeting. But then I saw some videos of you online and watched them, and you spoke about an energetic awakening, which actually happened similar time to me. For me, I remember the date. It happened on the 17th of May, 2011. And
Okay.
so I think yours was like 2012. So it's quite a long time ago. And sometimes I can't remember like before or after. And I've spoken about it so many times. I feel like, yeah, maybe now I'm getting it a bit wrong. You know, the memory changes
Yes, I
things.
know. Yeah, yeah.
Like, and yeah. So, but yeah, I just thought that we could just talk and explore it. And also really interested because I saw that you then also went into Kundalini stuff or investigated that a little bit. And I thought that was really interesting because I also experience very many weird energetic things and experiences and
I
yeah,
don't think I've
it's
heard
hard
much.
to find people
I
to
don't think
talk
I've heard
about it.
much of your energetic stuff, like the Kundalini. That's fascinating to me, that stuff.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. I don't actually talk about it so often because I don't really understand it. So it's yeah, just sort of leave that aside a bit.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm just beginning to look into it a bit more because yeah, because some more weird stuff has been happening. And I came across a teacher called Ananda Mai. Have you ever heard of her?
No.
And she's like a yeah, she died in the 80s. She was born in like 1897 and they yeah. And I only just found her recently and when I was reading about some of her energetic experiences, I could relate. And so then it sort of brought more interest.
Because there's that kind of prejudice that you shouldn't be getting those after awakening, or they shouldn't be interesting, almost like
Yeah.
a prohibition. And they're just fascinating. And I know behind the scenes, I think there's a kind of almost like a consensus not to bring this stuff in a non-duality talk or mention
Yeah.
it. And kind of
Yeah.
curious about that behind the scenes. Do you know, like it is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. So when I heard you speaking about it and also your awakening or whatever, I don't know what you name it. Yeah, I just thought I would be really interested to talk about it. And then I thought other people on the channel might be interested. And then I also have another little mission as well of like there's been a mission in my head for years to want to interview more women. But yeah, it's doesn't have it's very slow.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, there's more women now, aren't there? But still the main people are the guys, aren't they? And
Yeah,
energy, it's different energy as well, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so maybe you could tell a bit about your story, like and what happened for you in 2012. I would be fascinated to hear.
Well, a little bit of the lead up, maybe. So, um, yeah, I mean, I was living on the edge. I mean, I'd heard of non-duality maybe, I don't know, a couple of months before that, maybe. But obviously, not really understanding, not even on a mind level, really at all. Um, And I had been suicidal for 10 years, actively so. Made 3 attempts in my life. And yeah, so I felt very cornered. I got to a point where like life was really, really difficult. I was starting to have panic attacks. I'd my life on the edge. I felt like I was getting stronger. I felt this sort of freedom. It was freedom of the ego. It was kind of like, it's almost like whatever life threw at me, I thought I can handle this. Da da da. But I began to slowly kind of fall apart. I felt like the the defenses that I had, I was very defended. I was quite shut down at that point. They just weren't holding up anymore. So it was just I just kind of starting to feel quite helpless, and I was quite alone. I was quite isolated, and then sort of like I was sort of faced with I might end up homeless as well. So it was just like I just um yeah, and around that time one thing happened. I thought of it was a friend of mine recommended me meeting up with this non-duality person who I won't name, and I met them, and they said, "Oh, do you want to hang out?" So I went for a coffee with this guy, and my instinct was just sit and just I just sat and I looked at him for about 10 seconds, and suddenly I had this heart opening. So it just felt like this huge iron gate. That something that I hadn't been aware of was just suddenly opened, and there was just suddenly this love was kind of pouring in. It was just like wow. So that was kind of um there was a sort of bliss kind of thing that was going on just during the week. There was like felt very good, and I was in a relationship with somebody at the time, and we'd gone out for our usual Saturday night crazy, cab from bar to bar to bar to bar, like getting back at like I don't know 3 a.m. And yeah, I woke up that next morning. The whole day was a head fuck. Like it was just really weird. So I woke up that next morning and went into the kitchen. There he was drinking his coffee, and I saw his eyes for the first time. So that's how I kind of started it. Like wow, like these blue eyes, really dark blue eyes, and then I don't know. And then I went on into the bathroom and I looked in the mirror and I saw this 5-year-old, like my 5-year-old self, like not like it was my 5-year-old self looking back at me. And it was really bizarre. All the age had been taken out of my face. I looked young, and it was like really nice, but no shocks or anything. And I came out to him and to Kevin, and I was like, is there anything different about me? And he was like, I've never seen your face like that. Like all the tensions out of your face. He was an artist, so kind of like, notice that kind of stuff. Um, so yeah, like, and do you mind? I'm going through the whole day. Is that all right? It's just
Yeah, go for it. It's so fascinating, like to hear other people's, yeah.
yeah, well, it's just we would always the next day we'd like go out, and the next day we tended to go in for coffee, like in the middle of town. I was living in Fulham, so just we're walking down to the tube station, and I've never seen like the sky was just like you could touch the sky. It was just radiant. It was different dimensions, and I was sort of walking with my head back, and I mean I hadn't a clue what was going on, and then we got on the tube and I spotted this guy sitting on one of those bench seats with his head rotating in a perfect figure of eight. So he was obviously having probably took too many mushrooms or whatever, but he was having some Kundalini experience. But yeah, and bizarrely, instead of sitting with Kevin, I sat opposite this guy and just did the same things I'd done with this non-duality. It was kind of automatic, just sat right in front of him. And I could see he was aware of everything. I mean, I could just see he wasn't nuts. You could tell, like even my boyfriend could tell that. So I sat with him for about like 5 stops or something, and just watching him and just these eyes that just seemed to see everything. And then I thought, well, my boyfriend, he's quite sensitive. He's gonna fuck off at some point. So I went and sat next to him, and so yeah, I was just sitting there, and suddenly suddenly I was just looking around and I saw everyone's Buddha nature like visible on their faces. Like I had no idea what that meant, but I did in that moment. I could totally understand they were awake, and I kind of panicked. I thought it was sort of like I'm the last to know. I'm the last to know that everybody's awake. Like and it just and then suddenly I saw the veils appear, like kind of oh they're awake, but they don't know that they're awake. Like it was yeah, it was just so clear. And then everybody seemed a bit startled. I guess I was looking at them in that way, just like just really like a lot. And then yeah, I got off the tube and that's the we went for coffee in walked down Villiers Street into Seven Dials and went to there was a Dial hotel where we used to have coffee at the time. And I was just sitting there and there was a plant they had these little plants in the middle of the table. I was sort of sucked in. I was suddenly absorbed into that and I was just communicating with that and whatever that means. But it's just and suddenly my body started to kind of melt into the floor, which I remember as marble. It probably wasn't, I don't know, but I started to panic a bit because I started to sink into everything. I panicked a bit and it came out. And at that point, um, I started having spontaneous kind of kriyas. I was going into kind of yogic. It felt like a choice in a way, like I didn't have to do this, but it was so much fun. So, and I think my boyfriend was getting a bit twitchy, and so were the staff in the place. I could tell. I thought, oh no, they think I'm nuts. Like maybe I should stop. But so he went to get. I remember him getting the bill, and I stood up, and I thought I'll just get a couple more. I'll just let it happen a wee bit more. And so I was just like being moved, and these and the energy and this it was just the bliss was just so deep. And I was just being moved. And yeah, we went out of there, and boyfriend was like, you're not getting the tube back. We're not getting on the tube because you're going to scare people. And so we can get the bus, whatever. But so we walking around. That sort of started to open up more. It was like so everyone I was walking past, I just knew everything about them, and I was just like, wow, just like it's like everything they did. But of course, this isn't verbal as it's however it is, but it was just yeah, it was just absolutely no kind of boundary between me and them. It was just yeah, just knowing the whole lot. It was very, very drunken by that point. And but so we got the bus back to Fulham again and we did what we normally did, which was go out to dinner and we'd have something to eat and he would go his way and I would go mine. And it was a restaurant called Aziz, which was just down the road from me. It was like a rocking kind of restaurant. And I was just, yeah, sat by the window or usual seat. And because you can really feel it when you talk about it, sort of feel really kind of like, mm. But yeah, then it was just suddenly it was like, yeah, heaven on earth. It was really, there was a tree out the window and it's like I'd never seen a tree before. It was just getting deeper and deeper. And I don't know. So at some point, there was some kind of panic because it just felt like I don't know something was kind of gone. I couldn't grasp hold of anything. You know, that's the bit's pretty hard to describe. It was just there's kind of nothing and everything, and I didn't know how to eat, and I was trying to eat my food, and it was like, what am I doing? What's this? No, I didn't and just sitting opposite him and watching him, I guess because it's so removed from speech and stuff, it just seems so meaningless and and funny and kind of so sincere. There was something really funny about sincerity, there's this, can't you can't kind of convey that. It was just, I don't
And
know.
did your partner what was he thinking about this? Did he notice?
He wasn't saying anything at that stage. He just seemed to be in this sort of monologue, which was just he didn't seem to notice what was going on for me, and then we kind of parted ways, and it just kind of continued for me. This quite difficult to navigate in some ways, like because the love as well. Like it was just feeling drunk kind of all the time. This kind of drunkenness. He didn't stick around for very long. Like yeah, so I mean the sense of location on that went as well. So it was just yeah. In some ways, when I was walking, I was just very, as you are, just absorbed by everything around you, and just no boundary. So it was just, luckily at the time I spent a lot of time alone, so I was just staring at the cup on the table or sitting in the balcony or out in the park, and just occasionally people seem to be drawn, like it's almost like they recognized it. I was in a cafe once and some woman came over and nodded, and you'd get kids doing weird things around, like it's like jumping up and down and getting excited. I don't know. It seemed to have a real energetic component at that point. It was quite but all the struggle, everything, I mean, that was gone. The story was gone because my mind was completely empty as well. So there was no kind of sense of location. The mind completely gone. And there was just basically, yeah, timeless, I guess, in the timeless. And yeah, so I think and spent probably about five years in total, spent a lot of time just sort of sinking, just the novelty at some point kind of started, like it became more normal, but like it was very deep for a long time, and but I couldn't make sense of it either, and you know but yeah, eventually I did kind of.
Did you manage to get home that night? Like, how
Yeah,
did you?
it was only 200 meters or
Oh.
something. Yeah, I realized because there's one of the I realized it was standing out a bit as well, the way I was acting, because you kind of walking differently. I think when it's so deep initially, like I don't know, I noticed one guy, I think he was probably one of the local dealers, thought I think he probably thought I was off my head on drugs, or so I kind of tried to dampen it down where I needed to as well. And I started having a lot of sort of psychic experience at the time as well. So it was kind of yeah, but there was nothing weird about that either. Like nothing, it takes the weirdness out of everything. I think after, this sort of self is kind of gone, it's like nothing's weird anymore. It's all kind of, I don't know.
Wow, that's amazing. It's so dramatic. And your mind, there wasn't any thoughts about like why or how this had happened, like in the beginning.
Um, I mean, I think sometimes it came. I don't know initially, but sometimes it was, and then I ended up hanging out with somebody who was a teacher, and I ended up a couple of years later I met Richard, and we went out. I was in a relationship with Richard for a while, and then for a few years, and then yeah, but it seemed to be attracting that, like somehow it just seemed natural to kind of, but yeah, making sense of it, sort of, because I just, yeah, I mean, also I suppose when there's no, I don't know about you, but when there's no thought there, it's like most of the time it's just too absorbed
Yeah.
kind of think about it. And
It's just so amazing that it happened in that way, that you didn't get afraid, like that your energy just kept going with it, because it's so, I mean, if we're talking about the same thing, it's so extreme. Like I had so much spiritual knowledge beforehand, so and it for the first period that it happened, I couldn't think about it having happened. So I understand that I couldn't reflect for a period, but there was somewhere I felt like a knowing, like that I wasn't losing my mind or something. There was a trust, but maybe not actually. Maybe you're right. Maybe you just accept this new like Zoom. I mean, like you're so into everything. You're like totally forgetting yourself.
Yeah, I suppose it's like it's a dramatic switch, and yet it's not at all, is it? It's so kind of natural. So there's no, it's just that life is just gone, and the life of the mind, and the kind of, it's just so absolutely, oh, here you are. Yeah, so in a way, like, yeah, it's a kind of quiet fascination, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's and it's not a backward glance because you're not thinking about, oh, 2 days ago I was, or a week ago, whatever, I was freaking out. It's just gone, and
Yeah.
and that's it. And everything
Amazing.
seems to kind of, it seems like a time as well that's kind of magical because everything seems to, well, it did for me anyway. It seemed like everything went well. Everything, I mean, the boyfriend fucked off after about, I don't know, after maybe it was a couple of weeks. I think he had enough of, because he said, you're like a Scientologist, you just smile at people all the time. Like he, I think he was used to the drama because it was a very dramatic kind of creative relationship that was chaotic. It was fun at times, but it was just really destructive. So I couldn't really partake in that anymore. I wasn't interested. So in some ways he liked me more. He said, you're really nice now. And he liked me a lot less. So
Yeah, that's
yeah.
funny. And so when when it happened, were you still able to function? Like for me, like I felt like I couldn't do certain things anymore, and you can't really tell people that you can't do things. But it was also like I didn't really know what was happening, like because I felt very. I didn't call it drunk, I called it stoned. So I felt very stoned. So it was like I couldn't really do complex things. Like in the beginning, for me, like crossing the road was like a complex activity, but that got easier, those types of things. But but yeah, could you still carry on doing your job and or like doing
Well,
regular social activity?
luckily I wasn't working at the time, so I didn't have to.
Oh
So
yeah.
basically I was just I was just spending a lot of time sitting, so I didn't need to do anything. And so I just got in, I did get into a routine of like I go and I'd sit in Brompton Cemetery on my favorite bench, and then I'd move to I'd walk up to Hyde Park and I'd sit in a certain place there. And I just do this whole circuit, like it was like 4 hours a day, like just sitting and then walking and then sitting and walking. Yeah, I did that for a long time. And
Wow.
but yeah, and then I suppose it was about, it's like 2012, maybe 2 years later, I started psychotherapy training. Don't ask me, which I couldn't have done because I didn't. When I looked at the content of what you've got to do in a training, it's like normally I would have been like, "Fuck that! There's no way I could do all that." But for some reason, I think because you're not living in time, you're not thinking, oh, you have to do blah blah blah. It was just kind of like, well, also the thought like, well, other people can do this. I'd never thought like that before. Like, so I kind of signed up for that, but it had its own, it was difficult in its own way as well because you've nothing going on mentally. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like, talk about your problems or draw your
Yeah.
problems. It's like, you
Oh,
know,
what? So you have to like you have to tell when you're doing the training, you have to like tell people like your issues and you have to do group circles and feedbacks, I think, when you're doing
yeah, so
groups.
it's so difficult as well because it's so easily mistaken with dissociation as well, and maybe
Right.
it's
Yeah.
it's an easy one. It's much better to be in a training, I think, and to have a glimpse rather than kind of some sort of permanent shift or something, because then you can go back into your problems, I suppose, and talk
Yeah.
about those. And so yeah, it's in some ways it made it easier, in some ways it's just like maybe don't do it.
So what did you do in those circles? I don't know. I have this imagination that you like when you're training, you have to do like these group circles where you're talking and reflecting about problems or like what you're working on.
Yeah,
Or
but you just try to remember stuff. I don't know. Like I can't. This is public. Real stories. Yeah, it was just really tricky because what do you do when there really isn't anything, and also it was also difficult. Gosh, this can make me sound awful, but there was still that lack of boundary, and and almost like it felt very psychic-y at times. And then sometimes that was kind of known, like I think I've talked about it before, like going into a supermarket and going through the till and something spontaneous that, in me was just like, oh, oh, you had a big NDE, and this guy had a stroke and he was writing a book about his NDE, and he ended up working in a supermarket. He was a physicist. And stuff like that. There were I think three other people I knew straight away. They were awake. So you had a big awake. Like stuff like that happened that's never happened since, but just I could kind of it seemed, but it was spontaneous. It was just really it's kind of funny.
Yeah. Oh, well, so you just had those flashes. You don't still have psychic stuff happening.
a, a little bit, maybe some precognitive stuff, precognitive dreams I've had. Yeah, a couple of things like that, but not very often now. But yeah, and I can be very dismissive of it. And the last time it was probably to my own detriment, really. But I don't know.
What about like do you have psychic feelings like picking up? I mean, a bit like, well, this interview, like just before this interview, like I reached out to you, you had been thinking or you'd seen something about me, like things like this happening.
Well, that's yeah. I suppose that's kind of synchronicity stuff, isn't it? It's just
Yeah.
before that, it was like I wonder what Lisa Cairns is up to. I watched a couple of I watched an interview. I can't remember who by, but I watched a couple of things of yours, and I really enjoyed them. I thought, oh, that's really cool. So yeah, and that was and then suddenly it was probably a week later you messaged, and it was
And
like,
then,
I'm sorry. Yeah, I suppose do you get more? I mean, people get it anyway, don't they? Synchronicity
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, I get psychic stuff, but I get it like it's again like the trust, it's you don't know when to trust it and when not, like when it's imagination or when it's not. But for me, what it feels like is that often when I get into somebody's orb or something, or when I've had some sort of communication with them, this is really weird, I start having their feelings or thoughts. Like, so, but as a first person. So as it's like, so if they're thinking, it doesn't always happen. Yeah, it's mostly with people I'm close to. So if they start thinking like, I want this or I don't want that or being angry about something, then I will start having it as a first person thought, which is very confusing. And it's taking me years to work out what's happening.
Oh, that's interesting. So you get the thought as well as the
So
feeling.
so I get the thought and the feeling of that person, but as if they're thinking it. So it's not like it suddenly goes, this person is thinking this. It's like I will get the thoughts, like I want this piece of chocolate or like
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, so it's not even
that's
an empath.
confusing.
It's different than that, isn't it? Because that's
It's mostly with people that I'm close to. So I would say I was an empath before, but yeah, so I'll just start having their thoughts and their feelings. And so I have to be careful to not like there's to be a carefulness to differentiate, when I'm picking up their thoughts or feeling, because otherwise then I'll just do what they want. Like
yeah, right enough. But at least you've got the doubt. I mean, it's the same here because there's. I mean, I have seen it where people just assume that what they're experiencing is you know is the other person or something. I
yeah,
think maybe it is because that. I mean, it's also abusive as well, isn't it? To say,
yeah,
this is what you think, this is what you feel,
yeah,
and oh,
yeah.
that's just.
Yeah, I mean, and so that's like the problem. So it's like a really difficult, and it's actually from my last partner that it's because, well, the partner I'm with, because he's so honest, um, it's made us be able to understand it better, like what's happening.
Oh,
And he sort of has the same sort of thing, but maybe just not as strong. So it's like really helpful for us both to understand that that's beginning to happen or that's happening. Because if you do, like you can't really talk about it with people because, like you say, it could be manipulative or it could be like trying to avoid things or you could be triggering their shame if you say anything. Like so you could Like, so it's a very difficult one to kind of like discern what is happening. It's
Whoa. And yeah, and if you were with someone who was less than on it, you could be so, I mean, not with,
manipulated.
yeah, God.
Yes. Yeah, it is a bit problematic. But I'm really conscious of it now, and I do begin to, as time goes on, notice the differences. Like so the like so I can now often define the differences between my thought and another person's thought, or my feeling and another person's feeling. Like there's a different color to them, but not always. Like it's confusing. It's a
You
weird.
say color,
I
is that like synesthesia then? Like is there a color to it, like literally, or are you just saying
I
metaphor?
don't. Yeah, no, no. I'm just saying that as a an example, like a color, but like a there is. So what is the difference? It's like a um yeah, like they have a different tone to them. Like I know Lisa's tone now. So it's not exactly, it's not color, but it's like I know Lisa's tone very well. And it's like
Right.
a different tone. It's like a different feeling, but it's very subtle. And I don't always get it right. It's a confusing thing. So I often just stay quiet.
Do you prefer that? Is it better or is it just different? That
I think I would prefer not to have that. Like
okay.
to that, but it must have been. It's been opened up here for it. It seemed to happen. I think it was happening a bit before the opening, and then I think it got like exacerbated. So, but I try to look at it positively and be grateful.
Yeah. It's easy to be dismissive of stuff as well. I don't know if you doubted it because like I did with the psychic stuff, I didn't talk about that. And it was just kind of also that non-dual thing of like, oh, I don't care about that. I'm bigger than, like it's not that interesting. Actually it can be, I wouldn't say disturbing, but it probably is easier to live without the psychic stuff, like as
Yeah,
it was back then. Like it was, yeah, it's almost like it's kind of better, a little bit of ignorance, do you know? Like,
yeah. And if everybody had it, and if everybody was like being honest, it would be a lot easier, and then maybe it would work. But because like everybody's like got their defenses and then aren't always conscious of what's going on. And then also myself, like I've got my stuff. Like so it's it's yeah, if everybody was in the same boat, it would be easier, I think. And then maybe you could see an advantage to it. Like it instead of telephones, we could just take out the telephone. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So for you do have these things, but you're still not like exactly sure. Because I mean, I might in 10 years' time have a whole new take on that experience.
Oh, well, right, okay. Um, well, the Kundalini stuff that I got, that kicked off in 2019. Um, like that's what I didn't really know what to make of that. Like, don't know if you want me to go into that or.
I would love it.
Well, it was just starting. I had a bit of a crisis. So I'm not going to go into what happened, but it was a bit of a mess. But anyway, um, yeah, I when I came back from Northern Ireland once, and I was living alone. My flat went to my bedroom, and I would sit. I was starting to get inner light, and then I was starting to get a lot of light when in the dark as well. Like just um, and it was very blissy. So I'd just be sitting, and I remember just sitting and really sinking into that because I didn't sleep too well, but I didn't give a fuck. It's just really nice. And that's when I sort of experienced suddenly the bedroom seemed to completely vanish, and I was floating through heaven, and was aware of my a corkscrew effect of my Shahasra chakra of me in the bed and me going through heaven, just floating. It was very, very beautiful, but yeah, sort of by location, I guess, two places at once kind of experience. And then suddenly I was back in the bedroom, and sort of feeling quite smug about being to heaven when suddenly everything disappeared again. And it was just fire. Like it was just the most beautiful flames, but it was like a hell experience that I had an encounter with Satan. I mean, I was a whole idea of God and everything had disappeared for me in the kind of awakening. Like so, I'm not, wherever the hell this came through. So I had an encounter with Satan that was absolutely petrifying. He knew everything about me. I desired him hugely. It was the most massive desire. He was just offering stuff. He was really slippery. And I was just like felt so so small. And it was like, how do I get rid of him? No, and it, in the end of it, I managed to insult him. It was a tattoo he showed me. It was just like he was about the same age as me, and wearing t-shirt and jeans and stuff. And he just yelled at me. He just yelled, "You don't count!" And then this sort of space thing opened up like a portal, and I could see a guy sitting almost like in a pub or something. And he disappeared into the back of this guy, and suddenly I was back in bed. And that was the biggest one I think I had. And then I started having visions every night for a time and inner sounds. I started getting all the Kundalini stuff basically. It was like it'd be visions of the planets and almost indescribable beautiful sort of spiritual landscapes and stuff. But yeah, that went on. It kind of hasn't stopped really, but it slowed down because it was just, and I was just like, what the fuck, you know?
And did that happen like when you were falling asleep, or did it happen did it happen at that place like where you're kind of you're not asleep and you're not awake,
Oh
or were
no,
you?
not a hypnagogic. I was sitting up, like I was just sitting, so I wasn't, I
Yeah,
was on the cusp of sleep or yeah.
yeah.
So yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's really amazing. It's really a lot of, I don't know, so I know very little about Kundalini, but it's this lady Anat and Mai Ma, like there's similarities like there with the internal light, and then like yeah, all the different, yeah, these types of experiences that happen like really rapidly for her. But that's the only time. That's it. I mean, I know about Kundalinis from the years, but I don't know so much about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's
And
not
does
a
it happen during the day, or does it just happen when you're by yourself? Like, do you have control over it?
well, most of the big experiences just seem to happen more at night, but like yeah, like out of more kind of the astral stuff or like out of body stuff because I had two kind of MD like experiences as well. Yeah, I don't, yeah, I don't, well, nobody's got anything that interesting to say about it, I don't think. I mean, it's as real as this, right? And
Yeah.
I, um, but the first one brought up a lot of psychological stuff for me that hadn't been looked at. So that was my spiritual bypass kind of stuff, kind of
Oh yeah. Yeah.
so joining the dots and all that, which was kind of liberating. But the rest of it, I don't think it did. It was just made me more curious about what this is and what we're in, and um, yeah, no, it's just exciting. But
And do you still have a lot of the bliss and the drunkenness from the beginning, or is that more stable now?
it's more stable. I think if I do anything novel, like so when I'm out for a walk, it can get quite blissy quite quickly, and yeah, basically when I'm outdoors, I get more of it. And if I'm away somewhere, I can get it for I don't know a couple of days, whatever. But it's not 24/7 now. So I get thought and then no thought, and so it's
Yeah.
more of a mix. But the thought isn't. It's not the ruminative stuff that it was before, which is good. I quite like thinking. I mean, I kind of like the human experience. I mean, but I guess it's very different because before it was really fear-based stuff, and it was always, oh, this could happen, this could happen. I mean, I very much lived for the kind of for the week, for the day kind of thing. It's just this perpetual anxiety. So, I mean, anxiety now relates to something real, or like, I don't know. But yeah, so it's, so do you still get, is
Yeah,
it,
yeah, I mean, it's been changing the last 4, 5 years. Um, I still get a lot of the bliss and the feeling stoned,
uh-huh.
and I go in and out of phases of when functioning is less so good and when functioning is better. Like, I also got very bad memory. I did before, but it got worse. So I go through phases of that. And now it's beginning to get more intense again. But I just suspect now I'm going to get some Kundalini stuff too, because I started having stuff at night as well. But I have it. I think mine is more in between. It's like you know, in between sleep and awake.
Oh,
You called it a
hypnagogic.
particular way. Yeah. So
Yeah. What kind of things do you get? Can you say? Like,
it's only just started recently, but I started waking up when I was falling asleep. And so that was one thing that started to happen. And then just uh, lots of energies, like um, like fast moving energy. So it's not so much like you with visions or things like that. And now I have to just think a moment because I'm forgetting.
okay.
Like I'm a perpetual forgetfulness in perpetual
Yeah,
forgetfulness.
it does that.
Um, yeah, so that and then things like I can't really watch TV anymore. Like I like TV. I originally trained in theater and writing, and I like
Okay.
TV and I like books and like, but I can't really do that. But most of these are phase. So I remember, well, there was another phase like that where I couldn't really do it, but it's got really strong now. So I can't really like read too much or watch too much TV or yeah, do certain things, and it's very strong. It doesn't feel like my will, it feels like well, it does feel like my will. Like he said, it feels like I could stop it, but it also just is, it feels like a push as such. And things like I can't stop listening to mantras.
Okay.
I've never been a mantra listener all through the spiritual practices, like, and I can't stop listening to them now, like that's because I can't do the reading or the TV or anything or taking in much information. I can do work to an extent, so I just sit and listen to mantras at the moment. Yeah, and just lots of energies moving through the body that I just can't even like describe, like weird energies.
Some
Um,
stuff as well. Like, because it can be so different at times, can't it? And sometimes
yeah,
it feels like explosions in the body, and sometimes it's subtle, and
yeah,
sometimes it's really, really nice and
yeah,
can be orgasmic even. Like it can
yeah.
just, like, yeah. Yeah, I suppose it usually gives rise to something. Like if you're getting it, yeah, it will probably kick off into.
I suspect that it's coming because I keep hearing Kundalini and I keep hearing people talk about it. And yeah, so I suspect there's some stuff that's gonna start happening.
Do you see it as a clearing process? Because I don't know what to make of that either, really. Like it's bandied about, but nobody can possibly know what that is.
Yeah.
Like it just seems to me.
Yeah. What I conclude, but it's like a shallow conclusion in the end, is that maybe our bodies have to always keep expanding. Like so our bodies have to like keep realigning and changing and expanding. Like so because we are like what like our self feels so expansive that's not the body or whatever, like then the body has to keep expanding. So yeah, like karmas, your life, the people around you, like who even knows if you're doing it for yourself or for the people around you. Like that could sound like a get out of, but like who even knows what the difference is in the end. Like it's all like yeah,
Is
I
it,
don't know.
I was just wondering about the death thing. Like, is this? What do you think of death? Do you think of it as an end? Just curious. Like,
Yeah, no, I don't think it's an end. No, do you?
after these experiences, I find it really hard too. Like there's, again, there's always that doubt, and there's obviously it's unknowable, right, in a real sense. But it just seemed like because one of the near death like experience, it didn't fulfill all the criteria for a near death experience. But I was taken out of my body by four beings kind of met me and took me onto a street, and one of them was very spiritual, etc., etc. But I was reflecting in the street about my life and oh right, I'm dead now. Okay, it wasn't that long a life, but it could have been a bit long. I wonder how I died. Did I have a heart attack in my sleep? Who's gonna find like that sort of thing? And it was like I'm okay to go on. Like I know I'm going somewhere good. But it was just interesting having that reflection, and then then suddenly I wasn't dead, obviously, but like
Yeah.
yeah, and not that it would. In some ways, I suppose because the fear is taken out of that, because it doesn't, because there's nothing in here or out, it just the sort of
Yeah.
absence is there anyway, in a sense. But I don't know.
Yeah, and that's really amazing that you have all these things and and can hold them all. Like it's intense. Like some of these things are really, really intense. Like yeah, I feel like I've died so many times. Like not like that, like being taken out of the body like that, but just like so many experiences where I felt like I've died, like, and then I'm like, oh, okay, I'm still alive. Yep, there's a body. It's still going.
I think it can really mess with your sleep patterns. I don't know about you, and like the last one I had may have been, given rise to like my sleep's all over the place. That's the only. It's again, it's hard to pinpoint the cause of that, but it can't help, can I? Like, it just,
Yeah.
I don't. But
Yeah.
aside from that, things that should shake you to the core, it seems sort of awakeness or whatever, it seems to buffer that somehow. It doesn't seem to. I think of any of this, the psychic stuff. I think if it happened before 2012, I think I'd just be like really freaked out, and you know, but it's
Yeah.
just doesn't seem. I'm sure it could be possible actually, because never say never, right? These,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, God knows.
Yeah. And so how does that translate into your work? So you work with clients as a transcendental therapist? Is that
Transpersonal,
transpersonal therapist? Yeah.
transpersonal integrative. So it's all kind of Jungian, Kleinian, Freudian, existential, humanistic. So it's just you can throw in the transpersonal if you like or not. I mean, it depends because it's all kind of like it depends who your client is, doesn't it? And so it's just if they want, I guess, if they just want to talk about spiritual stuff or they've had experiences or which are more common, aren't they? So, but yeah, I mean,
And
it,
do you ever work with someone that hasn't had some contact with spirituality?
I mean, I find that easy enough because I mean, I love the working with the story and because the patterns are revealed there, and so I don't mind like working with that. Um, yeah. So why do you? Because you do
Um,
well,
yeah, I used to do sessions, but I don't do sessions anymore. I do small groups, so
all right, okay.
five or six people in a group, and they
Okay,
do
that's
one-to-one
probably more
session.
interesting. Do you find is it just better or
Um, I used to find um, I used to find it quite exhausting working one-on-one, actually. I used to find that quite hard work. I don't know if it was my personality or the psychic stuff or what was going on, but it used to tire me out. I'd do 3 sessions a day and then I'd be pooped.
all right, okay. Well, I want to be yeah, well maybe being an empath is like and being maybe I don't know. Yeah, I suppose I don't know if I find it exhausting. It's yeah, I don't know. It's
Different maybe, like, but I found like that it quite a regular thing that it was exhausting. So I stopped doing that, and yeah, and then started doing groups, and then that worked, and it works really well, and it's yeah, really sweet. These
Yeah,
small groups, so you get to know people, but it's not so person focused, like individual focused. So it's a bit more, yeah,
it kind of made more sense to me after the Kundalini stuff because I realized my own spiritual bypass. I don't know if you use that word. I'm sure you do, don't you?
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah,
because I didn't realize, like, I just if you've got no mind, no problem, right? But it's just weird that you can still be living the patterns. I think that kind of took me by surprise that I was still, recreating the old scenarios and stuff. So I could see the value in psychotherapy, in that sense because
yeah,
it's a bit of detective work, which I quite like. It's quite
yeah,
left-wing and stuff that's not
yeah,
very non-dual, but yeah, well, it can. I think that's where, yeah, the truth can set you free sometimes. An insight, like a psychological insight, can really.
yeah, yeah. No, totally. I did this same. Like I acted out the same patterns and was like, how? And then had to examine and really learn like the even though I'd done so much stuff before, I still had to carry on learning and understanding why I was doing the same things again.
It's kind of annoying because you sort of think you think you've kind of cracked it. Well, I did. I was kind of smug, but not smug, but just like, you know, I don't have anything to look at really. Do you know, like it did feel like that, and then suddenly, but it wasn't. I suppose when I realized it, it wasn't like it had to be worked through. It wasn't, but I felt like I had to talk about it. I had to get it out. I had to talk about because almost like the narrative has to be updated in a way. Like it's just, oh fuck, that wasn't what it was, and that wasn't what it was, and it's just,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of invigorating as well. Like this new lease of life is like, oh my god, but also yeah, and it's, I don't know, a
And it's
shape.
really it's really hard when you're like when you're having like lots of waves of like bliss or openness or all these like good feelings and then you it's hard to recognize these other things that are like a lot smaller in the background like that are
Yeah,
just sort of
and that openness to everyone as well, and it's almost like you're projecting that that your inner state is the same as their inner state, like in a
yeah
way. There's that kind of like, and it's not the same, like it can be really radically different, somebody can be just really hating you, or you just, I don't know, I
yeah
guess I was receiving any of that, and it's like, oh, like that was a real growing up for me. Like, not that I'm grown up, but like it's always a work in progress, right? Isn't it? And but yeah,
oh yeah so that's so yeah no there is similarities like this is interesting because like I don't find so many people to talk about this with but um yeah I found like there was a lot of naivety here that happened. I don't
yeah,
know if you found that too. So it was like a projection, like 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 that like that they love you in the way that you love them.
yes.
Like like you just love someone so much. Like and it's not personal. It's just there's just so much love. And then to discover that they're hating you is really like
It's actually, yeah, that really pissed me off when I realized that because it's kind of like, oh, like wasted. It just feel like, my God, like it'd be nice if some of that was coming back. It was just a whole, like, illusion, but or like a bit more of it. Yeah, I think I thought, oh, awakening was just like one size fits all as well because like everybody's different on the inside anyway, like
yeah,
after this, aren't they? And so it's
yeah,
just, for me, it was like, yeah, learning of discrimination and looking out, just being a bit more careful who you kind of let in. And
yeah.
I think that's what got me talking about this in the first place. I sort of thought, well, that's an angle because there's nothing to say about this really. And then, but I feel like it was part of my integration process was talking about it. Now I've integrated it. It's like, done that now. Like,
That's funny.
yeah, uh, yeah. I don't know so many. Yeah, there's not so many talk about that maybe in the mainstream. I'm not sure. Like the
Yeah, I can't imagine like Tony talking about it.
Yeah, no, I suppose, and then I think maybe that is a difference with the women maybe are more because we're in general a bit more sort of feeling based maybe. I don't know if that's a difference or not, but so
Yeah.
it's still I suppose occupy more of the kind of social jobs, don't we?
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff.
And maybe there's like more of an easiness to slip out of the um like the more traditional concepts like so of non-duality. So I don't know if that's true though, but just more like more of a willingness to slip out of it and speak very personally and
Yeah,
it's hard to know though.
I think so. It feels like maybe it's just like feels like less at stake or something. I don't know. I don't know that I could do that anyway. I don't feel particularly. I mean, I'm terrible at speaking. I don't like that idea of someone at the front anyway. Like, so I feel it's quite nice in my meeting, small meeting, but like when people there are there who are awake as well, it's I find that really fascinating because it's just really interesting then their experiences and stuff. And there's the therapist in me I can't kind of switch that off. I'm always wanting to know people's experiences rather than focus. But there's bugger all to say anyway. Like it's
Yeah.
just like I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
That's
could.
and that's so beautiful. Like when I was watching one of your talks, I really loved that about you. Like because I could see I could see like your interest and your openness to other people. And then I felt, I don't know if this is true, this is a projection, that other people maybe wouldn't be able to see what the like the openness and the specialness of what you're doing because you're not proclaiming it. Like you're not like this is what the teaching is and this is the teaching. You're just being like really open and really genuine. It was like really sweet. Like you were asking the people about their experience and it was like and you were like really listening to them. It was very really, really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you were doing it in the early days, weren't you? Because you come in 2012, you were talking, because I saw some of your earlier stuff. And so it was, there were very few people doing it then, weren't they? And
Yeah. Yeah, there was very few people doing it. So now I feel like I can I'm more accepted for what I do. So back then it was like people often responded with such like devastation or anger or like, oh God, this is terrible. Whereas now people are a lot more like, oh, it might be odd, but then they're just like leave it at that. They're like, okay. Is a and more of an open, maybe that's the spread of the internet as well. Like people aren't so offended by people's opinions or what they're speaking about.
yeah, it's really common now, isn't it? And it's
Yeah.
a changed landscape, I think. But yeah, so yeah, I guess you find your own thing to do then with the small groups and stuff. Like I think you've
Yeah.
got to have an idiosyncrasy. You've got to have something kind of unique, a unique selling point now. Like I don't know, yeah, I know.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you still do talks or are you stopping for a while or
Yeah, I mean, planning and doing one in September. I just yeah, yeah. Well, there's still some people. Like sometimes it's really quiet, and sometimes yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm always in two minds about it. I don't know about you, but yeah, sort of like, why am I doing this? And then
yeah,
and it feels worthwhile afterwards. It is that sense of community as well. It's quite nice and
yeah,
sort of yeah. And meanwhile, it's just I don't know. It just comes back to the humanness as well. Just like because that whole thing of being authentic and living, fully human life. I mean that's kind of paramount as well for me, and just that kind of I don't know. In a way, the part I don't like is the us and them thing. Do you know
yeah.
wake
Yeah,
not
no, totally. Yeah, yeah.
don't
It's,
know how comfortable I've ever felt, like it's sort of because there is no difference really. I mean, I wouldn't discriminate between someone just because someone's awake and someone's not or something, do you know? Like because you can be an awake asshole or an awake lovely person. I don't know, like it's just
yeah,
and I think there's a lot of myths surrounding it as well, aren't there? And like some of the nicest people, well, I've met haven't been, and they're much more heart based. So it really you can't assume anything, I don't think.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is difficult. Like, I mean, yeah, there's so many problems with speaking about it, like like us and them, and yeah, I mean, there's just so many problems. I understand that. I was more like that in the beginning. Like I nearly quit so many times in the beginning, and then over time, um, yeah, there was like getting into my stride and just like it just yeah that I don't know what happened, but they would just stop being questioned. But in the beginning, I remember this strong desire to quit it and to just do something very simple that wasn't mindy or wasn't mind based or just like like gardening or walking dogs. Very simple. And then yeah, and then it kept carrying on. And even I found that even if I didn't do the talks publicly, I was doing it to people in private. Not that I necessarily wanted to, it just happened. Like, because if the other person's suffering and you're not, and you're feeling really happy and blissed out, then naturally words will begin to come out towards them. I don't know if you experienced that. Like,
I tend not to mention it. Like,
oh, yeah,
no, yeah, and it just doesn't. Yeah, I don't know why, but I just don't really speak about it unless like I have a couple of friends in therapy who are awake or whatever, and but yeah, it just doesn't.
it doesn't happen. But yeah,
No,
I found in the beginning that after time, like especially with intimate partners or very close people to you, if they were suffering, then there would eventually be talking about it with them. Like talk or maybe doing some forms of therapy or something as well. Like there'll be something that would begin to appear.
I suppose. Well, I suppose was in a non-dual relationship for quite a long time as well, so after nice. It's not really relevant, is it? But like, yeah, no, I think also my reservations by talking about where like that there is I think there really is something like the non-dual identity. Some people get trapped in and they try to kind of live out kind of ideas you know and it's that whole thing. There's no self like they start to sort of self negate and
Yeah.
maybe it's just like I get that I attract that through one-to-ones and it's not all like that. I think a lot of people just kind of get on with it as well, but there is that kind of risk people get trapped in. Well, there's nothing I can do because there is no one here, and
Oh yeah.
a literal kind of,
Yeah.
um, I don't know, they just resign themselves to situations or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really sad that actually seeing
Yeah,
that.
yeah, it's just can be heard anyway, can't it? And I think because I guess someone at the front of a room and you're projecting onto them, and we tend to imitate our ideals or attempt to in some way, like, and
Yeah.
it's just like don't, just don't. But
Yeah, that is a disaster.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I saw a lot of that. That is also another reason in the beginning was maybe I attracted a lot of men in the beginning and young men, and there was a lot of that in the young men. It used to make me want to vomit, but I didn't know how to communicate that. They would then make me have to go really personal to so even like to get them out of that. It was yeah,
What would they say then? Would they?
just the that there was nobody there and
Oh,
they would kind of like be implying that they were awakened or enlightened, but you could see that they were really deeply
oh,
suffering.
right. Were they rivaling with you? Were they trying to be? Was it a kind
Um, I think that, yeah, maybe they were trying to rival or trying to impress, but I think there was also them trying to delude themselves, like
okay? Yeah,
trying
yeah,
to
yeah. I've
convince themselves that they were not suffering. Like there was like a lot of shame around admitting suffering, maybe.
Okay. No, I can imagine that must have been really frustrating.
Yeah.
It's like, I think I've had that once or twice, like, and it's really, or else that's sort of like, or else they could be quite patriotic, like people who don't get it, and I don't know if you've had anyone try to teach you.
Oh yeah.
But I've had yeah, guys,
Yeah.
like, you know, male acquaintances stuff, like, and try to teach me non-duality and stuff, and it's just how do you get it to stop? Please stop. But you can't actually point it out to someone. You can't show them what they're doing because they don't know what they're doing, and
Yeah.
so the only thing you can do is like just either disappear or just sit there and take it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's really annoying. But
And often because it's like coming, well, this is my thing, is that it's coming from shame, like from them. And when something's coming from shame, it's so hard to point that out to someone because as soon as you point it out to them, they're going to get shamed. And then the shame, in a way, will make them nail down on the story even more, like they'll,
oh yeah, yeah, and
yeah,
there's nothing
see,
worse than that, is there?
yeah,
Yeah, because it's so fragile, isn't it? That if you
yeah,
sort of look at that, it's just like a big emotional flashback and be mortified for like 2 months. I don't know.
yeah, yeah. Nice. Maybe that's us coming to the end. I can feel I'm getting like a bit tired. It's a bit later here, and I go to bed incredibly early.
All right, okay. Where are
Yeah.
you then?
Well, yeah, I can't. Yeah, I don't live in England. I can't say it online. I'll tell you
Okay, don't
afterwards.
worry. Right,
But not too far away.
right, okay.
Yeah. Um, yeah, that was so beautiful speaking to you, and so many things I feel like we have in common or similarities, and just find your story and your way of being fascinating. I'm very humble as well. Like what you do and what you've been through, I feel like is really humongous, and not so many people can take that, or like because of the fear, like and then also the integrating the human stuff. It's really beautiful to
Really
see.
enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Talk to you at last, finally.
yeah, yeah. After our first meeting with Richard, that was so funny. I
That's
had to chuckle about that.
fine.
But then I book his room, and then I take his room. So I book his place, and then I take his room. So he comes. I'm doing a talk. I've taken his audience, and then I've taken his room.
I remember because he found the room upstairs, didn't he? There was a
Yeah,
room free, and then I remember because someone took over the meeting, someone who was in that meeting, and like it was a really shitty day. It was really funny, and the way that like some people like just do their own little satsang, like they
yeah.
pretend to speak, and he had that to deal with for ages. It was really funny.
And then I'd taken his room downstairs, and most probably some of his audience as well. Oh man. Yeah. Sweet. Okay, so I'll stop the record now. Yeah, thank you so much, Dawn. It was really beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. All right, bye bye.